The image you're looking at is a real postcard advertisement from the early 20th century. This was the entrance to the Coon Chicken Inn, a chain of American restaurants that operated from 1925 to 1957. Its founder, Maxon Lester Graham, built a brand on racial caricatures, using blackface imagery as a marketing tool. For decades, the restaurant thrived, serving fried chicken under a grotesque stereotype of African Americans. But how did something like this exist in plain sight? Why did people accept it, and what does it tell us about racism in American advertising?
At the Coon Chicken Inn, we aim to please. The best 100% mammy-made family-style meals. You can taste the love.
I like the white meat. I'm a breast man.
We just love it here.
You'll just keep hollering, gal, fetch me some more. Look for that wide-mouthed coon near you.
Coon Chicken Inn.
It all began in 1925 when a businessman named Maxon Lester Graham, along with his wife Adelaide Burt, opened the first Coon Chicken Inn in a suburb of Salt Lake City, Utah. The business model was simple: good food, catchy branding, and what was then considered humorous imagery. But today, that branding is recognized for what it truly was: an offensive and dehumanizing portrayal of black people. Despite, or perhaps because of, this racist branding, Coon Chicken Inn quickly gained popularity. In 1929, a second location opened in Lake City, Seattle, and by 1931, a third was built in the Hollywood district of Portland, Oregon. Graham even advertised a fourth location in Spokane, Washington, but it never materialized. The restaurant's success was no accident. It was a product of its time, a time when blackface caricatures were widely accepted in mainstream American culture. The Jim Crow era had normalized racist stereotypes in advertising, film, and everyday life. The Coon Chicken Inn wasn't an outlier. It was part of a larger industry that profited from the dehumanization of black Americans. But not everyone accepted the Coon Chicken Inn without protest. Throughout its existence, black communities voiced their outrage. Civil rights activists condemned the restaurant's imagery as degrading and harmful. In Seattle, some black residents spoke out, calling the logo a cruel reminder of a system that refused to see them as equals. But in a time when segregation and racism were institutionalized, their voices struggled to reach the mainstream. The backlash against the Coon Chicken Inn was part of a larger resistance against racist imagery in American media. As the civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s, attitudes toward these depictions began to shift. As the civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s, attitudes toward these depictions began to shift. By the late 1950s, public sentiment had begun to change. As the civil rights movement called for racial equality and dignity, overtly racist businesses like Coon Chicken Inn became increasingly unacceptable. In 1957, the last remaining location closed its doors. But the legacy of the Coon Chicken Inn didn't disappear. It simply transformed. Today, original Coon Chicken Inn signs, menus, and advertisements are collector's items sold at high prices. Some people view them as relics of history, reminders of America's racist past. Others see them as symbols of the persistence of racial stereotypes. The Jim Crow Museum of Racist Memorabilia in Michigan collects these artifacts to educate the public about America's history of racial stereotyping. As Dr. David Pilgrim, curator of the museum, puts it, "We don't collect these items to celebrate them. We collect them to confront the past and ensure it's never repeated." The story of the Coon Chicken Inn is not just history, it's a cautionary tale. While the restaurant is long gone, its legacy reminds us that racism and branding didn't disappear, it evolved. From Aunt Jemima to the Washington Redskins, America continues to grapple with racial stereotypes in commercial advertising. So the question remains, how do we remember these chapters of history? As relics of a bygone era, or as reminders of the work still left to do?